Hello there, my friends. It's Carpo here. So, how many languages do you know? I was thinking about this earlier and I decided I was going to make a video about it. I've always considered language to be more than just words that are uttered in a specific cultural context. In other words, a lot of folks these days talk about how important it is for your, say, children to learn a second language and how useful it can be. And when your young mind is developing, it's the easiest time to learn a new language. Now, I've thought about this a bit, and I know that this is true, that children learn a language easier. But when we talk about language, we're generally talking about English, French, Spanish, whatever it might be. Even Latin. I mean, when you really consider it, taking a class in Latin seems to be, in fact, I'm fascinated with it. You know, I'd like to know Latin, but it's a pretty useless language. Unless you're trying to understand some scientific terms and but the point is, it's not about the language itself or how much you'll use it. It's about allowing your brain to develop new centers of communication, new connections between words. And with English, I've always been really into language. I mean, I have been fascinated. I was not a good student. I tended to not do my homework, didn't do too well in school, but I was in a spelling bee in like 4th grade, and I remember my teacher saying, you've got an amazing ability to spell. It's just, you don't, kind of like anything else, I don't do the homework, but I know the information. So the language I wanted to talk here about goes beyond English, French, Spanish. We're talking about music. Music itself is a language. If you play guitar, you're speaking a language. Now, my drums, I guess, could be considered a language, keyboards, but music in general. I mean, even though let me just say, there's spoken language that has many different inflections, different, regions that speak with different accents, and that would be similar to the way that different musicians have different accents in the way that they play their instrument. But each different instrument would almost be like a different nation, a completely different language. Even though languages are all based around the same ideas, they are, there's still languages that each with its, even though they're all related in the sense that they play the same keys, but they're not the same in the sense that if you wanted to be a keyboardist, you could probably learn guitar pretty easy because you understand the basics. If you're a guitarist, vice versa, you could probably play a keyboard pretty easy. But I've had a hard time learning keyboard. I'm a guitarist, and I've played drums before, but really guitar is my main, guitar and bass. I played bass growing up in, a band with my brother and some friends, and so I have thought about this quite a bit, and as I was getting ready to make this video, actually after I started it, I started thinking about other forms of language which maybe, say, unspoken languages. One of them was, first before I even made this, I quickly looked it up to see if perhaps music is treated by the brain as similarly as language actually is. Because people say music is a language, and it really is. Musicians speak to one another through music, but is it actually treated the same in the brain as a language? And apparently it is in a lot of people, not in everyone. Depends on how into the music you are and how much you play, I guess, and the type of person. But what about other types of language or things that might be considered language, like the language of nature? And by saying that, really that leaves a pretty open-ended question as to exactly what is the language of nature. What does that even mean? I can never explain to you what it means to walk out in the woods and see patterns that tell me something about nature. You can talk about chaos, you can talk about fractals, you can talk about patterns, you can talk about dendrites. None of that means anything when you're trying to put it all together and formulate it into a way to say, oh yeah, by the way, I was talking to the trees today. It's not like that. It's different. Just like you're not actually talking through your instrument. You're just speaking a language that people... And here's the one thing, when you're speaking like English, if people understand English, they will perceive it as, even though they know the words you're saying, different people perceive different words to mean slightly different things. So a sentence you say to one person, another person completely takes it out of context and doesn't understand what you're saying. And in music is the same way. When people write songs, everyone knows a song that they feel really strongly about, that they think it means this particular thing, and it turns out it doesn't mean that at all. And that's just in the lyrics. Well, when you hear a sad wailing guitar, it might not be sad at all. That's just the way you're perceiving it. So, in other words, musical language is perceived in the way it needs to be perceived by the individual. But what about nature's language? Is that, even explainable? Probably not. There's a psychedelic language, and this is, I guess maybe where I'll leave this off. My experience with psychedelics is, why does that guy have that guy? There's been a guy over there trying to start his car since I started this video. I just realized I've learned to kind of block these things out, but anyhow, yeah, got to work on your car, I guess. Mine's sitting out there broken. Sorry, got distracted there. Anyhow, I'm fascinated with different types of language, and I guess the reason I made this was to say that don't worry about teaching your kids another language if they're already playing instruments. And perhaps if your kid understands a little bit about nature, if you have a kid that can sit by a creek or a brook and really understand and watch the water go by and watch the trees, and that's a language in itself too. And it doesn't mean that it's hard for us to understand that as, we say that about kids, but really I just say that because it's easier for kids to do it than adults, because adults seem to be pre-programmed to, think that it's too late. We tend to think that, oh, well, I'm an adult now, I have kids, I'm grown up, I can't do these things anymore. Oh, well, I really wish that guy would shut up, but I can't change it. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's the same guy who yells at his wife and scream at each other. So, when you've got a shitty neighbor already, then you hear him. He's one of those car guys that start his car and rev it up for 15 minutes trying to, his neighbors must love him. Here I am complaining. That's a language in itself. Anyhow, what do you guys think about all the different languages out there? And I don't know. There's a lot of subtleties. And perhaps you could name a few more, since I've lost my train of thought because of the asshole over there. I can't really think of a lot more. And plus, I was distracted. My kid's in there making coffee, and I'm horrible with distractions. I'm trying to learn how to phase out the bullshit that's around me, but that's why I usually make videos in my back room. There's always too much shit going on, and people have said, "Oh, I wish you'd make more videos outside," and I love making videos outside. But it's the sirens and the cars and the people, and it's hard to be focused when you're just trying to make a video off the top of your head. So, anyway, thanks for coming along. Talk to y'all soon, and for what it's worth, have a wonderful day.